Hey there, and welcome to University of Hoops, the show that takes you behind the scenes of your favorite basketball team. Today, we are super excited to welcome University of North Carolina Wilmington women's basketball assistant coach Hailey Yohn. Hailey, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Blake.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into how your team is doing this year. Looking to turn things around in the CAA and make a run in March. What do you like about your squad this year through the ups and downs that you guys have had?
Yeah, we brought in 9 new players last year. So we had 6 returning from the previous season, won a total of 5 games. We currently have won 13 and hopefully counting the last 2 games coming up here this week and then heading into the CAA tournament. But the thing I love most about this team is they really enjoy each other. And I think, being around the profession for 10 years, being a student athlete myself, is kind of rare when you get 1 through 15 who actually genuinely enjoy being around each other and want to get better every single day, are bought into the process, and things of that nature. I think is pretty rare right now and in this day and age to see that. But right now we are 7-8 in conference. So it was a big jump from last season. Obviously, we want to keep doing better and finish above 500 and all those things. But the biggest thing for us is just continuing to get better each day, whether that looks like on the court, off the court, with our chemistry, with our culture. That's the biggest thing for us. And yeah, the CAA conference this year is completely wide open. You have anywhere from the first place team that's 12-4 to the bottom place team is kind of even across the board. But that makes it really fun on any given night, depending on the matchup. Who knows who will win? It's all about matchups with each team, and especially heading into conference play. These last 2 games, people are fighting for seeds. It's tiebreakers. It's who's going to execute down the stretch and who wants it more. So we're really excited for it.
I mean, 5 to 13 wins, that's big time because it's quite the jump. It's an amazing job by you and the rest of the staff. I mean, what are some of the intangible things that you guys are proud of the stuff that you've been able to do with the girls this season?
Yeah, I think so. The players who are returning, right? We had a 5-win season last year. So wins were hard to come by. And so the biggest thing for us is we were trying to teach them how to win, and bringing in really talented transfers from winning programs and winning cultures from Monmouth, from UNC, Richmond, Belmont, and Bradley. We knew coming in that we wanted to get, experienced players who knew how to win that could help us with that. So I think the biggest thing that we've seen is just their belief and their resilience. We've had some games, we've had ups and downs during the season. We went on 2 different winning streaks. We went on a couple of different losing streaks, right? But their resilience and their ability to come in every single day and just commit to getting better, and believing that we are good enough to play with these teams. We are good enough to win, and kind of infusing that confidence in them. I think just with all the ups and downs that we've had and the adversity we've faced is just the full belief and support in each other, and just a connectedness too. I mean, they're starting to learn each other. People say you want to peak right in March and when you're playing the best, and I think we're headed that way, for sure.
I mean, we were joking before we started about how there's no off days. You said today is an off day, but you're fundraising and you're doing
Mhm.
all sorts of stuff. So whether it's a day like today or a game day, walk us through what your day to day is like in your role on the staff.
Yeah, for sure. So I wear a lot of different hats on our staff, and especially to like an off day we talked about. I'm in charge of our fundraising and our NIL efforts on the program, and so we have a event called Dancing with the Seahawks. So it's kind of like a play on Dancing with the Stars, and last season was our first season of doing it. And Coach Woods, our head coach, she did it. She was actually a part of it, not when she's at UNC Charlotte, but with the Boys and Girls Club in Gastonia. And so when she took over as the head coach, she said, I want to do a different fundraising thing, not just a tip-off luncheon or whatever that may be, but I want to do Dancing with the Seahawks. So I had no idea how to plan an event, to this magnitude before, and it was kind of, 2 feet in and figuring out how to do it along the way. So I was working on that today, making sure our dancers and our dance instructors are on the same page. Our event planning with our catering, and our event space is all good, getting funds for it, right? So selling tickets, selling tables, fundraising for that. So just kind of checking off all the boxes when a day where, we say quote unquote off, we're doing that. And then the basketball part of it today. So we play on Thursday. So just doing a lot of scouting for Hampton and North Carolina A&T, making sure we're prepared in that way, going into it back-to-back games and then heading into the conference tournament. Don't know who we're going to play yet, but making sure that we're in the best position to put ourselves in a winning place moving forward. So that's an off day. It could also range from, player player meetings or people coming by, meeting with marketing, with social media, whatever that may be. Just kind of the off the court things that I think a lot of people don't realize go on behind the scenes. Just last week, I was putting in an equipment order for us for next season. Who's thinking about that right now, right? In March, February, but that's kind of what you have to do with that with the role. And then on a regular day, so I'll say tomorrow with a prep day. So we have 2 days of prep before our game on Thursday. So I get in early, definitely an early bird, try to get in when I can and get a lot of work done. So we'll do some player workouts. We have a couple players who are returning back to play with the rehab. So I do some workouts with them on the court. We'll do a staff meeting, talk about, what's the plan for practice today? What's the plan for the scout to make sure we're all on the same page? And then, we'll do a film session with our whole team. And then we'll go into practice for about an hour and a half, 2 hours right now. Just kind of play it with how they're feeling, making sure we get the stuff done that we need to for the game plan. And then after that, it could range anywhere from, watching more films or getting extra shots up with players, having more meetings for Dancing with the Seahawks, right? Fundraising, donors who call, recruits that call. And then at night, just trying to make sure, again, go through the film, watch the practice film. And a lot of it's the basketball stuff on a day-to-day basis, kind of intertwined with all that off the court stuff too.
You mentioned earlier, Coach, how you've been in the business for a decade now, and so much has changed, I feel like, with college basketball, especially in the last like 5 years or so. So with all of those changes and this new normal that we live in now with college sports being as close to pro sports as it's ever been, and there's a lot of, negativity that's talked about when people talk about that stuff. But I want to focus on the positives and ask you, what are some of the things you enjoy about the business now as opposed to, when you got started in it?
Yeah, I think getting into it, I was 21. So I was completely fresh off college, a playing career. I'd always wanted to coach since I was a junior in high school. It was always a passion of mine. Obviously, I loved playing the game, but the X's and O's and kind of like the behind the scenes stuff, I love that. I loved watching basketball, shadowing my high school coach. When I was in college, I shadowed our men's head coach at Coker. So I was all in it. I loved watching it and learning from it. So I think back then you're like, yeah, it's exciting, right? You're first getting into the business and you have all that excitement. And to me, that excitement has even grown even more as I've, been in the profession. And what I really enjoy now is just the grind of it, the work, like the early mornings, the late nights, people always talk about that. But to me, that's where you grow the most, the relationships that you build with the players. They're really cool kids. And I don't think a lot of times that people take the time to really invest in young women and in the student athletes. And that's where you grow those connections. And I think that's where you grow the trust. So I love the grind of it. I'm definitely a basketball junkie, probably sometimes too much. But yeah, I just love the work and I love seeing, when you invest into something, whether that be the players, the team, the community, and kind of reaping what you sow and you see those gratifications is something I really appreciate and I really focus in on a lot.
I mean, Coach, you mentioned being a basketball junkie. I know that you're from Durham, North Carolina, which talk about a place to grow up. Like, I mean, that's pretty. That's some basketball royalty right
Mhm.
there. That's on that those short list of towns. When you say those town names,
Yep.
people from anywhere in the world that play basketball will know that that's Duke, right? So talk to me about, your upbringing, and I would imagine, being around the sport from such a young age and what that was like growing up watching Duke.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love Durham. I was born and raised in Durham, North Carolina, born at Duke Hospital, all the things, right? So I tell everybody, like, I mean, I was born a Duke fan, like, obviously, right? You're right there. And it's either Duke or North Carolina in the state, to be honest. We have some NC State fans and Wake Forest. My dad and my sister went there and my brother-in-law. So not going to hate on them at all, but it's Duke or Carolina, and to me, it's such a hoop state. And to be around that greatness, I grew up when, Coach Gail Gessenkors was the head coach at Duke for the women's basketball program and just really respected, how she built the program, how she went about it. Obviously, I was a young kid, but I was, gaining all that knowledge and soaking it all up. And obviously Coach K and now John Shire, it's a level of greatness there. And it's a successful, a standard that they set. And to me, it was something I was like, if I'm a coach one day, like I want to emulate that, I want to emulate those standards and have that way about me. And yeah, when I was in high school, I mean, it was super competitive. We had a great high school team. A lot of our players went on to play at the Power Four level and really good mid-major level. My best friend Jenna, she ended up walking on at Duke, and so luckily enough, I made a lot of good connections through her. And through that time, I was able to work the camps during the summer. So it was really cool when Coach McCauley was there, getting to know their staff and those players and kind of seeing even more behind the scenes thing. But I went from being a camper. It was a pretty cool full circle moment. So I was a camper when I was little. I have the embarrassing pictures of me beside the players, and who knows how 8 years old, and a little hey, how's it going, and the shy girl to working their camps. And then when I was at Coker, we played Duke my junior year in Cameron Indoor Stadium. And then when I was a coach at High Point, we coached against Duke my second year there. So it was pretty cool to see that the full circle moment of, wow, I went from, growing up in this area and idolizing, the program and the university and the players to now coaching against them. And that was a pretty cool full circle moment from, going to camp, being a camp counselor, playing there, and then coaching against them was really cool.
You mentioned your time as a player at Coker and then coaching at High Point. How did that come about? You talked about that you shadowed with the men's coaches, I think is what you said there. So,
Yep.
how did you always know you wanted to go into coaching? And then how did that transition actually happen once you were like, all right, I wanna go do this at High Point?
Yeah, so junior year of high school, like I was saying before, like I really loved my head coach, Pam Adams. She was great there. The way that she taught us the game, her passion for it, I was instantly in love with it. My dad was also a high school coach at Bishop McGuinness in Winston-Salem. So he kind of always gave me that coaching itch too. I always pick his brain about things after he was finished coaching. And then when I was in college, obviously being a player at that level, learning from my head coach, but then also the men's head coach, Dan Schmatzer, who was there forever. He has a twin brother who coaches baseball there. They're both retired now. But, in my junior year, I was like, I really want to take this seriously and pursue this at the collegiate level. And as my time working Duke camps, I got to know Brittany Cox, who's now Brittany Hudson, who was at Campbell, or excuse me, she played at Pfeiffer. And we got in contact there through the summer. And then when she graduated, she was a couple years ahead of me. She worked at Campbell University. And at that time, they were in the same conference as High Point. So her and I stayed in contact. My junior year, I was sending out a lot of different emails to a bunch of different schools saying, hey, I'm a rising senior. I would love to be a graduate assistant or have any, part of your program. Please let me know, any feedback that you have. I reached out to probably 40, heard back from only two, but got a lot of a good experience from that. And then my senior year, I applied for the WBCA So You Want to Be a Coach program. And what that is seniors who want to graduate and go into the coaching field, they go to an event at the Final Four to get to know other student athletes who want to do the same thing and are in front of other current head coaches, assistant coaches, board of directors, things like that. And just, again, soaking up all the knowledge I can. So I went to that, and then through that process and through my friend Brittany, there was opening at High Point. And so she got me in contact with the staff. I went through the interview process while I was still actually at Coker. It was a month before my graduation. Had some interviews with them, went on campus, and then as I was graduating, was offered the position. And I was at my house I was at the family room. My dad was in his room. My mom was at work. And I got the call, and I said, she's like, would you love the position? I said, probably said some bad words that I probably shouldn't have said when I was a 21-year-old. I was like, absolutely. Like, I would love to. And it was a pretty cool moment. So, I got into director of ops when I was 21, right after graduation. We took a family vacation. Then it was, all right, find where your apartment is and get to work in June. So it happened pretty quickly.
And then I know in 2019 you made the transition over to Miami. I went to Miami, and I know you. This is the this
Okay.
is the
Yep. Here
other
we go.
this is the other Miami. So I just
Mhm.
had to clarify
We're still
there
Miami
for.
Blake though. We were a school I think before you guys were. So I'm gonna take that. We were the Miami of Ohio was a school before a University of Miami. So I'll get one up on you there.
All right, all right. I'll give it to you, especially since you decided to come on our show. I'll give it. I'll let you be there. But how did that opportunity come about, and what things did you learn there that then prepared you for the gig you got now?
Yeah, absolutely. So my head coach at High Point at the time, she got the job at Miami, Ohio. So I went with her. It was definitely outside my comfort zone. I'm from North Carolina. Went to school in South Carolina. It was an easy 3-hour drive down. And obviously working at High Point, my family was still in Durham, and I had family in Winston-Salem, and everything was, about an hour away. I was really comfortable. And in that moment, I was like, there was no hesitation. I was going to go. And I think a big thing for me was jumping outside of my comfort zone. And a lot of people say, get uncomfortable. And that's what I did. And it was a great thing for me as far as my career. The MAC is one of the premier mid-major conferences, if not, outside of the Power Four conferences in the country, in my opinion, for men's and women's basketball. But on the women's side, there were some really elite coaches there. A lot of them have now moved on to the Power Four side of it and very successful where they're at. But I was also surrounded by a lot of good colleagues and my assistant coaches. Two of them now are head coaches who are great resources and we're still very close to this day who've taught me a lot. But it was just a different level, going from playing D2 to High Point in the Big South to now the MAC. It was a high level conference and I learned a lot of stuff about scheming, game planning. I learned a lot about the cold, being from the South. And then my first winter up there were 8 inches of snow. And I told my boss, I was like, all right, let me know what you need from me at the house. See you guys tomorrow for practice. And she said, no, we still have to come in. My assistant coach, Tiffany Swafford, said, I'll come pick you up in the Subaru. She got over those little snow humps and we got to the gym and went to work. So definitely a lot of adjustment, but it definitely grew me a lot. X's and O's as a coach, off the court recruiting, making new connections in the Midwest, completely different from the South, different style of play. So definitely expanded my mind a lot on the basketball side of things.
I'm from California, coach, and I
Mm.
live in I live in New York now, and I got to tell you, there's no moment like first time you look at all that snow out there and you realize you still gotta go live your life.
Yeah, I'm like, no, in North Carolina it was a threat of snow. I'm sure like if there was a chance of snow, we're shutting things down, right? So this past winter there was a chance of snow here. Barely any snow fell. Schools canceled for a couple of days. So completely different on the way of life of things for sure.
Yeah, well, California, like it is a chance of rain, and people just forget how
Mhm.
to drive, so forget about snow. But
Exactly.
getting back to the basketball coach, you were able to make the jump to be an assistant pretty quickly once you got going. What are some things that you think helped set you apart and sort of vault you ahead in that realm?
Yeah, I think so. As director of ops, it's a lot of planning, right? A lot of organization. And I'm one to say I'm not the most type A person in all of that. I have my stuff together, but I'm not a huge planner and all those types of things. But a big thing for me was, getting into the profession. I had a passion for it and I knew I wanted to be a coach, but I knew, there were levels to it, right? And I was really focused on being where my feet were and just working hard and being really great at what I was doing. Whether that was, as a Dobo, you could do anything. I'm telling you, it was before that we were able to get on the court, right? As director of ops can do now as another assistant coach. But, whether it was get coffee for the staff, if it was breaking down film, if it was making sure the clock during practice, the horn didn't go off when it wasn't supposed to, when it was making sure our travel logistics were on point, whatever it was, I was focusing on doing that to my best ability. And don't get me wrong, I wanted to be out there on the court helping kids out with skill development and doing that. But I knew that I had to be great where I was at to even be thought of for the next step up. And I think a big thing for me I wasn't even focused on, oh, I'm going to really try to be an assistant next year. We had a really talented staff at High Point at the time. One of our assistants, Laura Harper, who played at Maryland, she's the head coach at Towson right now. So we had a talented staff and I didn't think anybody was, leaving or things like that. We all know how that can change, right, in the profession. But I was just focused at just being really great where I was. And if you focus on that, I was just a huge believer of, trust the process and good things will come if you put your head down and work. And at a young age, that's what I was, accustomed to and had no other option but to work. And then, hopefully opportunities will come from that.
You've talked a little bit about some of the coaches that have, influenced you a lot and played a big role. What are some of the best pieces of advice you've gotten through the years from some of those mentors you've had?
Yeah. Well, first I'll talk, Tiffany Swafford. She's the head coach at Canisius right now up in Buffalo, New York. So I'm sure you're a little bit familiar with that. And she is one of the best recruiters that I've met and I've been around. And so a big thing for her was, the relationship part of it. And she's been in this profession. She's a winner. She's a vet in it. And a couple of things that stuck with me is the word pause. Sometimes just pause. A lot of times as coaches, we're running at an extremely high level and we have a lot of different things going through our minds, but it's okay to just pause sometimes and take a second to regroup and take a breath and refocus. Another thing she said, which she got from one of her coaches, is told don't mean taught. It's probably not the best English right there, but it really kind of shifted my mindset with the teaching side of basketball is you might tell them, hey, do an inside pivot. but they might not know what you're talking about. Everybody has different, verbiage and terminology, what they're grown up around. So, that kind of stuck with me as is you got to teach even the smallest things. And even at the highest of levels, the smallest fundamentals are the most important things to teach. And she's taught me so much just about, how to carry yourself as a coach and how to make those connections. Recruiting, so that's everything. That's a lifeline of your program. Sahar Nusebe, who's the head coach now at Eastern Michigan in the MAC conference, is her first season as well. She was just one of the most genuine coaches that I've been around as far as really putting an emphasis on getting to know the person first before the player. And it's extremely important because, again, I don't think a player can trust you unless they genuinely know who you are. And she was really invested in spending time with players, off the court and taking them to coffee. Or, if one of our players loved chess, she would bring a chessboard into it and say, hey, let's play chess in the office. And just really investing into her players and then just having a big belief with both of them. They're both rebuilding programs right now, and their belief in what their culture is and in their players and their staff, just really helped me out too with, having that belief in what you can do. And then last one I'll say is Heather Carney. She's a high school coach now at North Myrtle Beach High School. And she was an associate head coach at High Point on our staff. And she was probably one of the best X's and O's coaches I've been around. Her defensive mind was elite. And so she taught me a lot of stuff on the court. She was also a vet in the game too. So again, I'm really lucky to be around such veteran coaches, but she taught me a lot about the defensive side of the ball. I'm more of an offensive minded coach, but her schemes and the way that she was very tactical about everything that she did was a huge influence on me.
What's a situation, coach, that you're the most proud of being a part of, whether it be a moment or a series of events so far in your career?
Yeah, that's a loaded one. I think a couple of the ones that stick out to me is when players see their development and their work come to light, so I had a couple players at Miami who were all conference or broke the school scoring record, who made those milestones. I also think players who go down with the injury and come back and see their progression show is huge for me. But I honestly say this season has been one of the most rewarding seasons I've been in, just to see kind of where we started, where we were last year, and as a staff and as a program, just to really commit to growing it and seeing, the huge win turnaround from 5 to 13. And we're still not done yet. But just to gel with the new day and age right of the transfer portal, to see 6 returning players, 4 freshmen, and 5 transfers gel super quick over the summer and have that connection, has been super rewarding. The winning is great. Don't get me wrong. The last second shots that, you drop and you see them execute, and that's the celebrations. At Miami, we beat Kent State on a buzzer beater from a half court 3-pointer. Let's see. Puerto Rico this past year, we hit a 3 at the buzzer to win it. Winthrop last year, we had amazing end of game situations to execute and to win those games. And that's always rewarding. But, to me as a coach, it's to see those players really reap what they sow and the work that they put in. And as a team, just gel as a unit.
What's your best advice, coach, to somebody that wants to get started in the business?
Yeah, I think it's just be consistent. Be consistent and do whatever is needed to get the job done. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think a lot of time as young coaches, you're like, I don't want to bother this coach, or maybe this isn't the right question to ask. But if you don't ask it, you'll never know. And the worst thing somebody could say is no. So if you work, you reach out to coaches and programs of, hey, I'm interested in getting into the profession. What's some advice you have? The worst thing, number one, they could do is not respond, right? But the next thing they could do is give you some great feedback that can really propel you forward in this profession. And I think just as a young coach is having consistent energy, positive, consistent energy. As a young coach coming into the profession, you're usually looked upon to be that one who's closest with the team, right? And to connect with the players. And to me, I'm a huge proponent on being consistent. And that's one of the values that is extremely, I value a lot in my relationships and my players and colleagues and things like that. But just being consistent and knowing what they can get from you every single day. It's probably the worst coming in and knowing, I don't know what I'm going to get from this player or this staff member, whoever it may be. And as a young coach, I think to establish yourself as somebody who's a go-getter, not afraid to ask questions, not afraid to do whatever it takes to be successful, and just to have consistent positive energy.
What's your best sort of perspective and piece of advice that you would give coach in terms of somebody who, was a player that went straight into coaching? Is there, if you were to talk to, maybe a senior in college right now that's playing that knows that they want to get into coaching? Is there something that you wish you took more advantage of that you would advise them to do?
Yeah, I think just reaching out to current college coaches. Like I said, I did do that when I was a junior, and I think maybe it was a year, maybe too early because they're like, ah, she's a junior in college, she's not graduating right until a year. But it's just to ask questions, is to put yourself out there. It never hurts to send an email, to send a direct message, to use your contacts that you have, whether it's your coach, your teammates, players who are now maybe you played with who are in the coaching profession, is just to reach out to people and again, don't be afraid to be denied when you ask somebody a question. I think for me as a college athlete, I probably would have reached out to maybe some more people that are more realistic, right, to coach with or to get in that profession and yeah, just use your resources that you have and people want to help you. Trust me, as a coach myself now, I always respond to when people reach out. I want to respond to them and help them because I was in their shoes before. So just making sure that, you ask those questions and you're open to that feedback.
What's your best advice, coach, in terms of you know, building good relationship with players?
Mhm.
And I mean, for you, like you played, and I'm sure that's helped you a bit, but especially since you have that perspective, how do you build those solid relationships with your players?
Yeah, I think it's just being who you are, being genuine. Players can see what's real and what's fake, right? And they can see when you want to have a genuine interest in who they are as a person, and their development as a player. So my advice is just be you and take the time where, go grab a coffee with them, go to lunch with them. Maybe after practice, shoot some free throws with them, have those conversations that aren't just basketball. I think the most meaningful connections I've had with players and coaches in my career is just talking about life. How your parents doing? How's your sister? How's your dog? Things like that, where it's having a genuine care for the person. It's this huge thing in my opinion, and that's something I pride myself on is building those connections and not being someone who I'm not. A lot of people say this profession can change you and all those things, but it's just staying true to who you are. And players see that, and it's also too, they can't trust what you're saying unless they trust you. And I completely believe that of they have to have that relationship with you off the court before they can trust you on the court.
Within coaching, what do you think is the most important thing somebody should know before they decide that they want to work in basketball?
Yeah, 90% is off the court. It's not with the ball in your hand on the court. It's there's 24 hours in a day. Everybody says that. And right now it might be a max 3 to 4 hours that you're on the court working, whether that be practice, skill development, film sessions. So a lot of it is behind the scenes work off the court. I think a lot of times people just think, you're a coach and you coach practice, you coach basketball and you coach in games. I can't tell you the amount of hours each day and each week that I spend on things that aren't on the court, whether that's film study, even though it's still basketball, it's off the court, whether it's going recruiting, it's making recruiting phone calls, it's talking to AAU coaches, it's marketing, it's fundraising, right? We talked about that earlier. And there's just so much more that goes into off the court stuff that makes the program run, and just making sure your players are okay, right? So checking in with them and all those things off the court. But yeah, 90% of it is probably off the court, 10% is actual basketball stuff.
This can be a tough business to stay in, coach. So what's your why?
I love the game. I think that's, first and foremost, I have a passion for it. I love it's like a chess game to me. I love the X's and O's part of it. I love watching it. I love the schemes of it. But another thing for me too is I just love forming relationships and connections with people, and seeing them grow, as coming in as an 18-year-old and seeing them graduate. Now it could be 24, right, with the COVID years and graduate years and things of that nature. But to really see a player grow from when they came into college, on and off the court to when they graduate, those mean everything, to still be invited back to, players' weddings and still staying in contact with a lot of players. It's something that I love. So definitely the X's and O's, the passion for the game, and it's evolving every day, whether that be, professional, collegiate, overseas basketball, just a continuing learning that I love to do. I love to learn. And so just continuing that every single day and just getting to know people, like I said, players or even, colleagues and other coaches in the profession.
What are your long-term aspirations, coach, in the business?
Yeah, the dream of mine is to always be a head coach. But like I said before, it's being where my feet are. It's all part of the journey, and we all have goals. And I think if you didn't have goals, there'd be something wrong, right? But to me, it's all part of the process, and I'm very process driven. And so every step of the way has taught me and something new and grown me in a way to prepare me to be a head coach one day. So definitely to be a head coach in the near future for sure.
If you weren't in basketball coach, what else do you think you would be doing?
Yeah. I love technology. So I would say, working for Apple or Google or something, that would definitely intrigue me. I don't want to be a 9 to 5 working behind the desk, but that's definitely something that I could see myself in, or being maybe a sports agent, if I had to do something within the sports industry too. I love the business side of it. And again, having those connections with players and that part of it would definitely intrigue me too.
Basketball aside, coach, what are some of your favorite things to do when you're not in the gym and you're not coaching?
Yeah, I love working out. It's definitely a release for me. So I'm going to say that. I love seeing new places and traveling when I can. I love to try new coffee shops. It's something we do as a team. It's optional, but a lot of the team comes of game day coffee runs. And whether it's a home game that, we're going down to the beach and seeing one of those coffee shops, or we were just in Charleston, going downtown before our game and doing that. Again, just another sense of community to do. So I love that. I also, a bucket list of mine is to own a coffee shop when I'm older and hopefully at some point do that when I'm retired or who knows. But yeah, spending time with family and friends and just enjoying, where I'm at. A lot of times we don't get much time to just be. I love listening to podcasts. So obviously being on here is great. And a lot of it's the basketball junkie part of it. But yeah, just anything that can kind of take my mind off the current place I'm in and working out, going to travel, see new things, and exploring where I'm at.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Coach Young?
Yeah, I would just say, trust the process with, where you're at. Again, a huge word for me is consistency. And, everybody's so focused on goals. I read a book actually called Burn Your Goals a couple years ago and by Joshua Medcalf. And it really opened my eyes to what are you really working for and what are you focused on? And everybody has goals. I think if you didn't have a goal to win a championship as a coach, you're not a competitor, right? We all have that same drive, but what's the process to get there? And it's celebrating the small wins. It's how can you stack each day? It's how can you find, even if you're in a losing season, right? How can you find the small wins along the way that lead up to the big ones? And I'm a huge proponent of that, is just trusting your journey and finding joy in it too, is having fun. And I'm a full proponent. Steve Kerr talks about this all the time with the Warriors of if you're not enjoying it, you're probably not going to get the results that you want to. And I'm a firm believer that the more that you enjoy something and the more connected you are, you're going to have great success from it. So yeah, just be process driven and focus on, what's next and not the end goal, because it's going to take care of itself if you trust the process.
UNC Wilmington women's basketball assistant coach Hailey Yohn. Coach Yohn, thank you so much for joining Hoops U.
Thank you, Blake.
Absolutely, and thank you to our viewers for tuning into another episode. We are University of Hoops, the show that's taking you behind the scenes of your favorite basketball teams. Follow us on all of our social media platforms at UNIV Hoops. That's at Univ Hoops, and we'll see you next time.